What if the enemy you feared most wasn't outside, but inside your own mind? What if every time you tried to relax, a voice whispered, "What if something terrible happens?" What if your brain hijacked your thoughts and held your peace hostage? This is the hidden war that millions face every day, those living with obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. And yet, in the eyes of society, it is often dismissed, minimized, or turned into a joke. Today, let's unravel what OCD truly is, and more importantly, why the stigma around it continues to hurt those who suffer. We'll hear stories, examine media, and explore how understanding, not judgment, can transform lives. For decades, OCD has been mischaracterized as little more than a preference for tidiness or an obsession with organization. We hear people say, "I'm so OCD," when referring to color-coded calendars or alphabetized bookshelves. But these offhand comments paint a wildly inaccurate picture of what OCD really is. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a chronic mental health condition defined by recurring intrusive thoughts, obsessions, that cause severe anxiety and the repetitive behaviors, compulsions, performed to try to silence them. These are not quirks. They are deeply distressing experiences. The obsessions can be terrifying. A mother with OCD may fear she'll harm her child, not because she wants to, but because a sudden, violent thought intrudes and sticks. A student may fear they've committed an unforgivable sin or offended God and spend hours seeking reassurance or repeating prayers. A man might need to tap a surface in exact multiples, convinced that if he doesn't, something awful will happen to someone he loves. These thoughts aren't choices. They're unwanted, invasive, and tormenting. And the compulsions aren't weird habits, they are survival mechanisms in a brain that has mistaken fear for reality. People with OCD often know their fears are irrational, but knowing doesn't make them stop. That's what makes OCD so cruel. And yet, the public perception remains shallow. In Western culture, which often prizes control and order, OCD has been reduced to an extension of perfectionism or productivity. This trivialization not only diminishes the seriousness of the condition, but invalidates the pain it causes. It implies that OCD is simply a lifestyle preference or a personality quirk, rather than a debilitating disorder that can destroy relationships, ambitions, and mental stability. Without correcting these misconceptions, society continues to marginalize the very people who need the most compassion. Unlike many other mental illnesses, OCD is uniquely burdened with being both laughed at and misunderstood. It is often the punchline in movies and sitcoms, portrayed through characters who are controlling, neat freaks, or overly meticulous. These portrayals erase the true emotional pain involved. And when the public only sees the shallow version, they naturally assume OCD isn't serious. This casual misunderstanding becomes a deeper form of stigma, one that affects how people with OCD view themselves, how they access care, and whether they feel safe enough to ask for help. Stigma is not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle and quiet, embedded in how people respond. Just stop thinking about it, or everyone has weird thoughts. Or worse, they laugh. This kind of invalidation makes many sufferers choose silence. They mask their rituals, suppress their thoughts, and bury their pain because society has taught them that mental suffering must be visible to be real. As a result, people with OCD often live in isolation, emotionally detached from their own lives, struggling silently while appearing functional to others. The weight of stigma isn't just external, it becomes internalized. People begin to see themselves as weak, broken, or dangerous. And the shame becomes a second illness. This internalized stigma manifests in many areas: romantic relationships, career paths, and even basic self-worth. Some individuals with OCD avoid dating entirely, fearing their rituals will drive others away. Others turn down promotions or job opportunities, terrified that new pressures will make their symptoms worse. And tragically, many delay or refuse treatment, not because they don't want help, but because they don't believe they deserve it. The psychological damage of stigma runs deep, carving silent scars that never bleed but always ache. Living with OCD is exhausting. It's not a temporary phase or an exaggerated personality trait. It's a constant, relentless mental loop. Many sufferers spend hours performing rituals before they can even leave the house. Locking the door becomes a 30-minute ordeal. Showering can take an hour. Sending an email turns into a torment of rereading, checking, and deleting. These aren't eccentric habits. They're desperate attempts to calm the storm in their minds. But perhaps the most painful part is that all of this is happening in secret. OCD sufferers are often brilliant at hiding their compulsions, masking them in acceptable behaviors or delaying them until they're alone. They don't want to be a burden. They fear being labeled as crazy. They're tired of hearing, "It's not that serious." So they suffer in silence. Over time, this isolation takes a toll. Relationships become strained, careers stall, ambitions fade. Joy is replaced with fear. Hope is replaced with shame. And without proper support, many fall into depression. Some even begin to wonder if life is worth living under the tyranny of a brain that never turns off. What makes OCD especially cruel is that it often targets what matters most to a person: their values, their identity, their moral compass. A deeply religious person might be plagued by blasphemous thoughts. A loving parent might be tormented by images of harming their child. The very thing they hold sacred becomes the focus of their anxiety, creating a cycle of self-loathing and confusion. And because these thoughts are so disturbing, sufferers fear being judged if they reveal them. They choose silence over misunderstanding. But in that silence, they lose themselves. Representation matters. The way OCD is portrayed in Western media has a profound influence on how society understands it. Unfortunately, pop culture has often failed people with OCD. From hyper-organized detectives in TV shows to compulsively clean-side characters in sitcoms, the media has reduced OCD to a laughable stereotype. These portrayals may entertain, but they come at a heavy cost. Real sufferers feel unseen. They wonder, where's the story that tells my truth? Even well-meaning content can cause harm. When OCD is framed only through visible compulsions like hand-washing or checking, it erases the vast spectrum of the disorder. Puro, a form of OCD where compulsions are primarily mental, such as counting, praying, or seeking reassurance, rarely makes it to the screen. The result is a dangerous misconception that if someone doesn't look OCD, they must not be struggling. This erasure further silences those who are already suffering invisibly. We need honest stories. We need nuanced characters. We need media that reflects the reality of OCD, not just its symptoms, but the loneliness, the bravery, and the daily battles fought behind closed doors. Creators have a responsibility. Every time a script turns OCD into a joke, it teaches audiences to laugh at something that kills joy, steals time, and inflicts pain. But the media can also be a force for good. Honest depictions of OCD, rooted in research and empathy, can reduce stigma and encourage viewers to seek help or offer support. It's not about censorship, it's about respect. It's about knowing that behind every statistic is a human life worth dignifying. It's time to shift the conversation. Stigma dies in the presence of education, vulnerability, and compassion. Western societies pride themselves on progress, inclusion, and advocacy. But true progress isn't measured by slogans. It's shown in how we treat the silent struggles of others. We need workplaces that understand mental health is not just about resilience, but about flexibility. We need schools that teach young people about OCD not as a punchline, but as a serious and complex condition. We need healthcare systems that make access to therapy and medication realistic, not a luxury. But most of all, we need to create cultures of radical empathy, where listening is an act of love, where we believe people when they share their pain, even when we can't see it, where asking, "How can I support you?" becomes more common than offering unsolicited advice. For families, this means learning to sit with discomfort, rather than rushing to fix it. For friends, it means resisting the urge to minimize someone's reality. For society, it means recognizing that dignity is not reserved for the neurotypical. Empathy is not pity. It is not about feeling sorry, it is about understanding, standing with, and amplifying the voices of those who've been silenced by shame. It is about recognizing that mental health is not a private burden, but a collective responsibility. In schools, in offices, in governments, we must center policies and conversations around inclusion and care. Because when people with OCD are supported, society becomes more humane for everyone. OCD is not a joke. It is not a quirk. It is not something to romanticize or mock. It is a deeply disruptive and misunderstood mental health disorder that affects real people with real emotions and real dreams. And the stigma surrounding it doesn't just hurt, it isolates, silences, and kills hope. But stigma is not immovable. It can be dismantled, one conversation at a time, one honest portrayal at a time, one moment of compassion at a time. To anyone watching who suffers from OCD, your pain is real. Your experience is valid. You are not alone. And to those who love them, be patient. Be kind. Be present. Because in a world that often tells people with OCD to just get over it, your belief in them might be the one thing that makes healing possible. Disclaimer: this video is intended for educational and emotional awareness purposes. It is not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you or someone you love is struggling with OCD, please reach out to a licensed mental health provider. Help exists. Recovery is possible. And you are never alone.